instead of using the current one.
So as we're moving along, very sorry, guys. That's enough silent those people already. It's the system I do on my laptop and then here in the room. So we're building on a population because of life and death, and then we haven't talked about migration even. So migration will be another event that changes your abundance, right? Where you're wildlife manager, all you care about for now is whatever mechanism is in the background. The bottom line is your population is either decreasing or it's increasing. That's your, and remember, technically, it's more common to reach density than pure abundance. So, so the population, if it starts from zero, like in this case, at to the left, the proportion of young ones and a few adults, a third of adults, and then it builds up to a stable population where the proportion of each cohort is stable over time. Year after year, your old ones disappear and people, the animals getting older, but the numbers remain unchanged. You have this situation when you're building a population from ground zero, when it's the exponential part of the population growth. So that's to be expected. There could be cases, I say very troubling for the wildlife manager, where you have a lambda of 0.887. So fancy question in the midterm. What's wrong with the lambda of 887? The answer, a very short answer, is below 1. That means that you're not replacing your text. Your population is decreasing. All the other ones are good, but you have to recognize that the population growths are different. One is extremely steep because the lambda is really high, and lambda is just basically a ratio of n at time plus 1, say into 2021 compared to last year. Then if this year I'm measuring 100 animals, and I had 100 last year, my lambda is exactly at 1. Population is stable. We're looking at a situation where there's an increment every year. This becomes interesting, not so much a picture really, but the scenarios that we're looking at least in the positive side of things, when the population is actually increasing from very low numbers. Different ways. So I see 3 curves. At the exam, I would certainly focus on 2 of them because they represent extremes. So I've discarded this one already. This is just a bad situation. We're just looking at either local, regional, provincial, state extinction. You see that, right? The numbers will, in this picture, the population will not pick up. Guaranteed something has to be done. But on the other hand, these 3 represent growth, so positive, to be expected. That's the normal way of things. It's population that's like putting money in the bank with interest. So basically, if you survive the year, you produce young, therefore you contribute to the population, therefore your population, your abundance is increasing. I want to focus on this one right here that represents really steep increase. You can imagine if I were to ask at the exam why, the answer is because lots of the birds really exceed the deaths, right? Keep in mind, that in the background, there's two ways to achieve that. Probably to increase your numerator. That means the year, the actual year you're looking at. And that means, I'm gonna say one word, recruitment. Obviously, the recruitment is like 50% right now. That's what I'm seeing at 1.51. I see an increase of 50%. Holy heck, we're talking rabbits. No, therefore, as biologists, you know the mechanisms behind it. Breed like rabbits, reproduce like rabbits. It's not a myth. They do really well. You get them the hay and you get them protein, and they will produce a lot of babies. The babies will survive really well. The adults survive well, and they reproduce more than once a year. So depends where, of course. But if they have the chance, many mammals will produce more than 1 liter. So as long as the development is quick. So in other words, there's a biological basis for this kind of pattern that is to be expected for a given species. So I go to Australia, I study a new kangaroo. I want to know what to expect. Is it really that? Is it that horrific? And I'm seeing 50% increase per year. No. The answer is no. But there are some cases. So I'm going to refer to simple examples in my simple mind. I'm going to refer to mice. You give them a chance, you live one mouse, or so I'm going to say male and a female, that's better, or a pregnant female into a new food source. Holy mac, you're looking at a large increase in the population. So mice, certainly, and this one would be represented, say, by very fragile species. The elephant is one of them. Gestation is long. The adult will survive, guaranteed. Mortality rates in adult elephants is quite small if it wasn't for humans, of course. But otherwise, they produce only 1 young. Never heard of twins, anybody? I don't think so. They're not species. To be expected, but you have to recognize that if you're rebuilding an elephant population, you better wait a little longer than mice. So at some point, the population the exponential will have a limit as a carrying capacity. And the population responds to the carrying capacity because suddenly there's a limiting factor. You see how I'm phrasing this? Straight to the point, using the technical terms for it. So the limit is called the carrying capacity. Strange concept because every biologist admits to a carrying capacity, yet we just never know exactly if a township, Northern Ontario, is able to carry either 10 or 20 moose, and that would be the definition of carrying capacity. 20 moose per township. Of course, after 50 years of management and monitoring and flying over with helicopter, at some point we have a pretty good idea, at least the order of magnitude. By large contrast, I'm going to say Parry Sound has a weaker carrying capacity for moose than Northern Ontario, simply because moose is a Nordic animal, so from the Nordic forests. So after the carrying capacity, the population can only, the deaths, you can see that the deaths will occur more often above the reproduction. That response, going back to the basics, that response is due to change in survival of the adult. Whoa, lack of food, starvation. So the adult themselves, so even a pregnant female, if she's short of food, she will die during the winter before giving birth. I'm talking ungulate. In March, she's in the snow laying down, and she couldn't find enough energy, enough food in the winter one time. So survival and reproduction. So a female can survive but abort.
or she cannot find an estrus, right? The heat period. So therefore, there's two mechanisms for understanding how the population responds to overabundance, above carrying capacity. If I were to draw, let's find a graph like this one, which is the theoretical model. Beautiful, not really realistic. It's more like this. We've seen this already with fluctuations around the carrying capacity. That's illustrated in the green line. And then crazy animals like these two. So overabundance, hey Jerry, we're way too many. And then, so it's true in the lemming, true in the hare. Their reason for a cycle is that they don't adjust ever to a carrying capacity. They overdo it. And then, wow, everybody's dead. Why? Lots of food. Yeah, of course everybody's dead. So there's lots of food now. So you're left when you rebuild the colony. And then first thing you know, those poor rabbits, they overdid it again right here. You know very well that the lynx is just waiting for that time. He's going to be right behind. The lemming does the same thing, so there's a good chance the Arctic fox, to name only one, might fluctuate with the lemming, right? So you have to, if you're working on Arctic fox, you're working on a snowy owl, same thing. You really count on those lemmings. This is a perfect quarter-pound cheese right here. Not too aggressive, lots of them. If you find one, you have a colony. They interbreed so much that they overdo it, overabundance, and they create a cycle. So I'm finished, I think, with this. When we talked about different scenarios, bring those terms to the exam. The theoretical model we know about. Chaos is unpredictable. That's what chaos means, correct? So we don't know if the population is below carrying capacity. For example, for a given township in Sudbury, I'm expecting 20 moose, and I know there's only 5 or 10. I'm below carrying capacity. I know population will pick up because there's plenty of resources. But if that species is chaotic, I don't know when it's going to go overboard and by how much, right? So you see that in the graph. Chaotic, a bit of a problem. We call it chaotic only because in our limited minds, we just don't know what governs the published. But obviously, it does respond to overabundance. That's mathematical. You're looking for a bowl of soup, you get only half a bowl every day. You need a bowl of soup every day. Well, this, in case of overabundance, every animal is fending for themselves, fighting more over food and so on. So spending more energy with even limited resources. I've raised weasels for the longest time. For years, I had captive weasels, and that's what they do. You feed them, they sleep. As soon as the food storage is out, they activate themselves, go out for a little poop, come back in, sleep a little more, stomach's growling. At some point, they will not stop running. They will not sleep anymore until they find some food. So it's true for every animal that's in, every predator that's in trouble right now. They work a lot. That means they really, it's an edge betting. Instead of building fat, they're using their fat, hoping to find more fat in the form of a prey. So they push themselves really, really bad. And that's in the case of overabundance, when they got problems. Your roaming coyotes, your transient animals are all animals that they couldn't settle, couldn't find the food sources. The whole point of marking it just about 1,000 a day. I'm not marking this area, I'll go somewhere else. So that's what happens right here when there's an overabundance. This one is predictable. We talked about the snowshoe hare and lemming as classic examples. The damp oscillations is probably the best scenario. I don't have a clear example, but clearly you have a species that for survival and reproduction, please bring that example or the response. So this depends on the fine tuning, correct? It's fine tuning at the carrying capacity where I'm thinking, for example, just a fluctuation in name a, let's go a little bit biomed, a stress hormone that's read in urine, commonly in wildlife these days. Stress hormone. Have a suggestion. You got it. What was it? Say it loud though. Cortisol. Very close. So cortisol. So the alcohol form of the cortisone. So cortisone might be, I'm not a biochemist, but I'm going to stick to cortisol. Oh, I said cortisol. You did? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Your math day? Yeah. 6 credits for being here. So cortisol is a motor, that's a stress hormone that's produced in excess in the body when there's the general stress on the body, like starvation is a stress. And, that could explain the fine tuning. In other words, fine adjustment in the endocrine system might change ovulation rates and so on, just fine tuning. In other words, on average, the population just produces a few less young, just enough. Pretty special, pretty advanced species. I'm not sure. And they have to definitely respond in terms of survival and reproduction to carrying capacity. Fancy statement at the exam. Thank you very much. The crash is, of course, a concern in human minds for most people. We're all worried about the extinction of species, so crash is not a good idea. What's special about crash is that it never picks up again. Did I mention genetic bottleneck? If not, let's go write it down. So in cheetah, that's been the case. So couldn't have the animals pick up because the kits weren't very good because the animals were inbreeding. You're getting a genetic bottleneck. So every time you start a new population with only 6 animals, you're in trouble. But they're present breeding. So that's called a genetic bottleneck. The remnant, I'm going to use the term remnant population, residual population after damage of some sort, impact of some sort, whether it's poaching, pollution. The population cannot pick up again because obviously survival and birds are not happening properly, right? You get that. Numbers are not increasing, therefore, yeah. So of course the biologists will look into birth rates, survival of the kids and so on, or survival of the adults. That's a crash, not a good idea. So I think there has to be cases. I haven't touched only the surface of what's out there for wildlife management is just insane. But I think translocation is a good solution. Translocation, if you want to write it down. So very common. That solution so far is to bring new population in the gene pool. If you want to write it down, gene pool. At that point, that's how population is considered as a gene pool. So you see how these apply, and surprise, surprise, the profit is constantly changing. I hope it's up to date on D2L. But I just added these 2 because I didn't know where to fit them, and this is
Just a question, are they trying to do that with cheetahs right now?
I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. I know major drought. Usually when somebody gets the science into Africa, they're often Caucasian people coming in heavily subsidized by conservation, like World Wildlife Fund, for example. National Geographic has started with the gorillas and all that stuff, you know, nice Fosse and so on. But once those I'm gonna call them Americans, once these Americans come on site, they just love it because Africa is a fantastic continent. Biodiversity is right there. Supposedly they were then men as well, so a very important ground. They stick around. Tim Carroll was one, like a short answer. Tim Carroll published a book on cheetahs, the only one and probably the last one tried to make a full story on cheetahs, including the problems, but that's already dated. So that's why the current information is very important on what's happening, initiatives, and through scientific papers, you will dig up some stuff. So you have to type it in on the science part of it. Also, loose science simply because the user is always involved. I'm going to be repeating this until December. Suddenly, we can't be in an ivory tower as scientists. You have to get the user involved all the time because they're really interested in finding out what you're doing to their alligators or doing to their turtles or doing to their birds, or they're the ones who called in the first place. So guaranteed, it makes up a looser science. So you have to really keep an open mind, keep your science to yourself, and make sure you approach these people with, you know, something they can understand, of course. So, same thing for cheetahs. That's Christian. That's the answer 1B. On cheetahs, there could be all kinds of local actions being taken. On the vet side, if people are into that field, they must have looked at all kinds of sites that offer placements in foreign countries for us. And sometimes you'll end up spending a week in a captive release program. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a mud road to get there. Not known. It's been operating for 30, 40 years. You see, I'm saying it's not mainstream at all. You don't have to stick to World Wildlife Fund. You visit just you think you're just going camping, and you end up staying and caring for a captive release program of some sort. All right. That'll teach you to ask questions. See, I can't stop. Hey, so I just wanted to remind you, this is totally detached, but it's still part of the ecological concepts, right? I mean, the fact that because we're going to be talking about habitat after the midterm, habitat is obviously food, shelter, to keep it simple. Non-specifics, why not? I mean, for a male, there's nothing like knowing there's a female there. If there's no female there yet, it's not really a good habitat. Vice versa, of course. And the black bear, too many males, whoop, the habitat's not so good. So conspecifics part of the habitat, right? So you can put your mind open on this. But food is absolutely, to keep it simple, food is certainly the primary ingredient for a good habitat. So you know these terms right here that you can bring at the exam. These are the plants right here. We have the herbivores right here. We have the predators on the herbivores, such as the wolf, and then all kinds of predators beyond, right? I mean, the top is called an apex predator. Apex predator is untouched. He's untouched, untouchable, and it can't do anything. So if you're, so you have to know what species you're looking at. If you're looking at a moose, definitely you're looking at her, the habitat will be mostly for her, so you can expect that. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Bring those terms at the exam. Thank you very much. So classifying your animal where it fits in that, it's called, of course, you can call it a trophic pyramid. Trophic pyramid. So trophics absolutely essential. The pyramid's always upright. It's very rare that you have the other way around. In other words, it's really rare that you're gonna boost your wolf without moose. The other way around. Start with moose base, you will get wolf. This happens this way. Sometimes you sample only for a year. Your moose is gone over. I'm gonna take a dramatic example of the snowshoe and the lynx because it's more straightforward. So the lynx responds to a high air density, produces a lot. It comes in the next year and everybody's eating all the snowshoe hare. You come in on that year, suddenly you're looking at a bunch of lynx. And no snowshoe hare. The pyramid seems reversed, but that's just temporary. So in other words, you can trust this pyramid to be what you need. We measure each portion of pyramid, say in kilojoules. So the amount of energy, it's simplest to bring all the plants together. How much energy is there? If you're looking at the feed for moose, which ministry does all the time, see what moose has eaten, what they eat, what they prefer, and how much is there in the habitat or township. They look at the browse, the field. Therefore, they can quantify certainly the kilojoules, the amount of energy contained in that township for moose. All right. They also know physiology of moose. They also know how much calories the moose will require. What they don't know is the kind of winter we're going to get. So management is still ongoing because we got surprises. All right. So again, long story on this, but obviously, if you're looking at this, not that I like this diagram too much, I sort of prefer this one. If I'm looking at a predator right here, and he's got problems with the moose, well, I'm sorry, but the wolf depends on moose feed. Am I right? So if you don't have moose feed, start. If you're looking for a wolf and you don't have moose feed, you're not in the prime habitat. We got time. Population extinction. So looks like unfinished business here. Doesn't say much, eh? No. I just want to be very short on this. The fact that the species extinction exists is no. So this is very on the geological scale. Different periods where we had, for example, a Cretaceous and the Permian extinctions that have been recorded. So, and this reads in the number of families of species, the families within that are present right here, from 0 to 750. And yeah, these are sharp declines right here, these ones, because the graph goes to the left, so a number of families disappear. Human population, on the other hand, is quite booming. I see maybe it says 2050. I don't know if this graph will have to be redone every year. We just don't know. It takes only Johnson and Johnson to come up with a new contraception technique for China. So we don't know about it. We don't know where it's going. So otherwise, it's quite high. And I also want you to bring, because we're talking wildlife, we are wildlife because we depend on what's living around us to feed. If it was only Mars, we'd be eating too much. You have to go, you have to go. So, I'd like you to remember that not only are we very abundant. Question to you, or have we reached overabundance? Have we reached carrying capacity? Anybody? Who wants to try? Yeah.
For humans.
Eh?
For humans.
Yeah, humans. I'm asking you right now just a few minutes on humans. Think we've reached our carrying capacity overabundant?
I feel like we have the means to kind of modify that.
Yes.
Advanced agriculture techniques and for instance, the innovations in architecture like high-rise buildings that limit space while maximizing one area.
Okay. So of course, humans, we know like no other species. We know what our requirements are. We know whether we need skyscrapers in the cities. I mean, question that didn't even come up 5 years ago. But we know what kind of structure, shelter, food, and so on. When it's limited, say, take that colony of Quebecers came into Montreal, Quebec City, so on. A few boats came in. Half of them died over the first few winters because of I think it's called scurvy. Correct, everyone? Scurvy. So we didn't see that coming, right? I mean, there's Europeans coming here. They found some oranges and suddenly they survived. They probably traded some secrets with the First Nations to help get their vitamins. And that was it. So that was post-fall. Post-fall, that colony could have gone extinct because of one situation like that. So then what Christian is saying is that we stretch our carrying capacity. So if you want to see it that way, it's not finished because we think that we haven't seen the end of it. There are certainly habitats we haven't looked at, and we now, like never before, have capacity to go down and fight the Titanic in 3 miles down. I don't think 100 years ago, I don't think that would have been possible. Technology is right there. There's a chance. Energy, you know that 50 years ago, we weren't talking about solar panels, electric cars and so on. So that's what's changing. That's our needs. Food, of course, agriculture. I'm thinking efficient transport. I looked at my beautiful bananas this morning and Chiquita, straight from Guatemala. Hello, transport. So I don't have to count on Turner to produce bananas. I just have to go with Guatemala. That system is a little risky, as you can tell. It takes only virus, invisible threat to stop all the cargoes on the planet and so on. So we'll see where that goes, but definitely we're stretching our carrying capacity. Suddenly we get into alternate sources of food. I don't think it would have been possible 100 years ago. It was because we didn't have all the grains and all the greens that are required for balanced diet. Stretching our carrying capacity. So we're very abundant and we are a large animal. I want you to remember this. We're a very large animal. We're active year round. So it's not like we're going to hibernation except during pandemic. See this because it sounds like we're going to have another one. But otherwise, we're active year round. Minus 55. There's people coming out of a lab in Antarctica to sample a little more. Not too long ago, but yeah, we're active year round, day and night. By the way, the roads are buzzing in the night, just 24 hours a day. So the bottom line is our ecological imprint, no matter what, will be huge. Our ecological imprint will be huge. For compared to other animals, we're doing lots. And I know you know that, I just want to hear it at the exam, just like that. Human impacts are direct and indirect, you might want to write this down. I'm trying to structure the whole diversity of impacts we could have, so certainly direct, when I shoot an animal. It could be for food, it could be for religion, if I protect the cow, the sacred cow. That makes a difference, so it's direct. Indirect pollution, obviously, I cut down a tree and I'm gonna bring a woodpecker. I just damage the nesting site, nesting cavity, that's indirect. All right, so the list is right here, I see 6 points. Habitats is, it sort of comes first because we do manage the landscapes pretty much everywhere. On the car, fuel consumption is taking away the Arctic, right? The Arctic ice is going. So ecological footprint is very important, and we never meant to melt the ice in the Arctic. Definitely a good example of habitat destruction. That's almost worldwide. Woods, forests, we like it, the fuel, the forest. It's a commodity for us, therefore it's a very important resource. I don't know if there'll be a day when this planet will not be using wood. I'm not sure. Sort of doubt it. So destruction of habitat, two examples, of course, of problems. I would like to mention the prairies again. We've looked at ecosystems. The prairies we've really put to our taste. Really got to visit the US and I won't. And it's really boring, but you sample in the field out there, it's corn when day 1 and day 5 still in corn. So 80 kilometers an hour in corn. Okay, we're gonna watch movies instead of Tom Cruise, I hope. Yeah. Introduction of predators could be a problem. Introduction of parasites. Overexploitation, that's direct, of course. Harassment, persecution is a little different. So exploitation is really removal. Harassment and persecution, if I keep shooting at a crow, for example, that's harassment. I didn't hit the animal, but that's an example of harassment. Persecution is one step beyond when everybody agrees that they will see the last wolf. So we kill it, but they want to bring it down. Persecution is really intense. It has happened before. I don't know if it's going to happen again. Definitely in Europe, that's the story of the wolf in Europe. There's in Spain, there is one remnant population. In Italy, in the Alps, they have maybe a few populations there. That's it. They share it with Switzerland. And so that was persecution right here. Just close to extinction, but of course, people, there's still some lunatics that say that they like the face of a wolf, they'd like to see a live one at some point. And every farmer say, no, we don't want them around. Sheep. Between the two, so we keep some remnant populations to try to find a balance between the different users. You understand that ecotourism is very important. If I'm going to go somewhere in Spain, I was very happy to be by a cave that had some of those Spanish. So, and I mean, if my spending in Spain will help the cause, therefore I'm helping the situation. Ecotourism will not be forgotten in this class. It's very important mobility for money. The idea is to make sure that if you go to Haiti, that the money will go towards the wildlife or so on, right? So over time, you guys will get at the head of some organizations and do exactly that. Organize some buses to visit German, bunch of rich people coming in, they really, before they die, they want to see a giraffe. And suddenly that money, a little tax to help the giraffes. All right, so ecotourism, pretty massive. Used to be only tourism, but ecotourism now. Some people do that. Looks for an excuse to go to the Caribbean. Only to see a mongoose get a snake. Yeah, I'm one of them. So interference is very indirect. Interference is just indirect. Doesn't mean you're cutting the wood. You're not removing the resources. You're just in the way. You're interfering. So it's like you're the third wheel in a relationship. Not good. That's a little more complicated. It's more difficult to measure, obviously.
Example of interference.
Would like birds stripping windows count as interference?
Yeah, I would think so, absolutely.
Because our buildings are just kind of in
Yeah.
their way.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that because on the radio before coming in class, I was listening to CBC and all kinds of. This lady had an account of the number of birds taken down by skyscrapers in Manhattan.
It's a big problem.
We're talking a lot of birds in the 100,000s and more, possibly.
Yeah, there's actually companies trying to come up with ways to make like window glass more reflective so that birds are able to see it better to stop them from
Yeah.
killing themselves. It depends on the bird.
Yeah. It's always the rare species. They're mixed flocks two-way migrations and mixed flocks. So you get all kinds. So sometimes you get the little ruby winged animal in there that you wanted to save. So that's really sad. Yeah, a good example. Thanks. So you remember this? That's ecology, of course, and you bring these to the exam. Not all of them, but definitely I see 7 right here. So you can bring certainly 3 just to show, to prove the point that you need more buddies up on the credit. You need a hydrologist, you need a geneticist, a zoologist, biochem, unless you want to do it all yourself. Good luck. It's very emotional, guys. It could be that in the population. I'm not sharing the whole time. So I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce oh, it says chapter 1. That's sad. That's really sad. Should be chapter 2, I hope. God almighty. Can't leave chapter 1 ever. So a few minutes to review the zoology part of ecology. Just to see what's out there for definitions, if anybody agreed, and the answer is no. So you have to keep an open mind. 2 or 3 definitions where, depending where you are talking, try to bring a couple at the exam just to show that there's more than one. So I don't want to be too narrow-minded and stick to one. I don't want to say wildlife is birds and you come to Guelph and you're going to be insulting all kinds of mammal people. So some people would say undomesticated is a good keyword to have. Undomesticated, that's a safe bet. That means that, and even that gets tricky. What about those animals that are captive releases? That I'm talking mink, for example. Mink is a situation because they are weasels, they get through holes, and they're bred in the thousands for fur. And every farm, they call them ranches. So every mink ranch has had STPs. The term I'm thinking about is feral. You got this down already. So a very large responsibility of the wildlife manager is taking care of unwanted animal, captive. I'm not going to call it captive release, but
unintentional, unintentional. So therefore it's SD. So
we're still gonna call them undomesticated for the very large part. But you know, it's really a problem if the animal has been genetically modified, like the mink. Over time, the market asks for a larger animal, tamer animal, different colors and so on. That goes out into the wild. So I have colleagues in Ontario working exactly on that. Dr. Shuka has been involved with work with release of mink somewhere in Southern Ontario. So of course, all kinds of ecosystems, as you can expect. So therefore, the diversity is quite large. Some animals are sacred, so suddenly you get into the cultural part of it. I thought I had modified this, and looks like I'm not even up to date myself on this. Wildlife population has decreased by 68% since 1970. So due to overconsumption, population growth, and intensive farming. Write those down, those factors. By December, you're gonna be having a whole list of actions that specify the direct or indirect, but have an impact with the animals. So overconsumption, population growth, human, and then it's intensive farming. That being seen, I live in the valley and there's a new road. 3 years ago, a new road was developed. There's a new one developing right now. So the wildlife might be losing ground. Note the International Agency World Wildlife Fund, the Society, the Zoological Society of London is quite important because they were the first rich people to colonize much of the planet and go into Africa. They colonized much of Africa as well. Documented English, and they documented the animals very well. CITES, very important as well. If you never heard of it, it's an international commission for the trade of endangered species, right? So maybe it reads as the Commission for International Trade of Endangered Species. So it deals with international, so it's not easy. You're dealing with all kinds of ambassadors in different countries being involved with the ivory trade is one of them, of course. You can all kinds of rhinos. Raise your hand quickly if you heard of black bear gallbladder being an aphrodisiac for anybody. So that's another classic case, if I may say, because it caught the eye of the journalist. Suddenly you got 3 million views on that kind of topic. So keep an open mind. Dealing with black bear doesn't stop there. There's other bears elsewhere that are targeted for exactly the same reason. 2 people in China? Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's what they do on a Saturday. And they're not the only ones. And they do like everyone else, they just try to survive and reproduce, correct? So villagers will make their money where they can. I mean, we got our own situation with poachers, for example, but in China, we just the sheer number of users. One guy has the gallbladder in China. That's whole bunch in there, the same thought at the same moment. So the impact can be collective. A few definitions. Living things, pretty general. Non-domesticated. Looked at the word vertebrates. Do you agree or not agree? Yes or no? I'm going to come up with my own definition. That's what's going to happen. But yeah, I prefer vertebrates, thinking that the fly is not wildlife. you know how it gets tricky? I'm gonna get in a fight with the queen for the saying that the fly is not wildlife. Doesn't sound right, does it? But then nobody does fly management that I know of, except for, of course, the zappers. Not that domesticated is important, and let's see. I think I'm gonna stop right now before we get into that review.